because you would have given your life for my mom.
Robert Wagner is 95 years old and still posting workout videos online. But what you don't see is what happened in 1981. A woman drowned off his yacht that November night. He waited 90 minutes before calling for help. In 2018, investigators named him a person of interest. He's refused to speak to them ever since. Today, he lives in Aspen with his wife, who just happened to be the victim's closest friend. The marriage started just 2 months after the funeral. And the most shocking part? This story gets darker the deeper you go. Robert John Wagner Jr. came into the world on February 10, 1930, in Detroit. It was the middle of the Great Depression, but his family wasn't struggling the way most were. His father, born in 1890 in Kalamazoo, had already fought through hard times. He'd left home at 10 after suffering abuse, selling newspapers to survive. By the time Robert was born, they were living in a grand house on Fairway Drive, built in 1934 beside a golf course. His mother, Thelma Hazel Alvera, had worked as a telephone operator. Her parents were Norwegian immigrants who married back in 1887. Since his father went by Bob, the boy got the nickname RJ, and it stuck through everything that followed. In 1937, when RJ was just 7, the family left behind their Detroit estate and moved to Bel Air, California. His father had landed better work, and the new neighborhood placed them close to golf courses and Hollywood studios. Wagner ended up attending the Black Fox Military Institute, a school founded by men who'd seen the trenches of World War I. It sat right next to Wilshire Country Club, and its location meant Wagner was surrounded by the children of movie stars. Even then, his world was orbiting close to the film industry, and that made a quiet impression on him. Not long after, around 1942, RJ got sick. Rheumatic fever hit him hard, locking him away in bed for months. Back then, it was a dangerous infection that could mess up your heart permanently. The doctors warned his parents it might affect his growth, or worse. But while he lay there, RJ turned to radio shows and movie magazines. That time alone with his imagination only drew him deeper into the world he'd been skirting around for years. It might have been a cruel twist of fate, but it also gave him focus. And he made it through, stronger than anyone expected. When he was about 12, he started caddying at the Bel Air Country Club. It wasn't just a job, it was his front row seat to Hollywood legends. Clark Gable, Fred Astaire, Bing Crosby, they all passed by. He wasn't the best caddy, often too distracted by the stars to notice where the ball landed. They called him the Quiz Kid because he'd fire off endless questions about their movies. Gable once had to pause mid-swing while RJ asked about shifting gears in a car during a romantic scene. Even while they teased him, they couldn't help but see something in him. Years later, when he told Fred Astaire he had landed a role at Fox, Astaire just smiled and said, "Get in there and do it." At 18, in 1948, Wagner's moment finally came. A talent scout spotted him at a restaurant. Soon after, he signed with agent Henry Wilson and took a crack at the studio game. His first gig came through a connection. His dad knew the director. The film was The Happy Years, and his pay was $37.50. His dad gave him a 1-year deadline: make it in movies or get a real job. At Fox, he made $75 a week, and competition was brutal. Dozens of fresh-faced guys were fighting for every line, but things started to shift. In Halls of Montezuma, released in early 1951, he had his first credited part. The studio began to see his potential. Then came a turning point. His 47-second appearance as a war veteran in With a Song in My Heart was silent, but powerful. Just trembling hands and tears. 2 weeks after the premiere, 10,347 fan letters flooded in. More than some stars got in a year. Fox gave him a raise from $150 to $750 a week, and 3 lead roles that same year. But behind the charm, things got messy. During the shooting of Stars and Stripes Forever, Wagner, then 22, was dating 3 actresses: Joan Evans, Terry Moore, and Deborah Paget. Trouble broke when a columnist snapped a photo of him leaving Evans's house at 2 a.m. She was just 16. California law didn't care about parental consent in those cases. The studio went into panic mode. They assigned him chaperones and demanded he stop seeing the underage girls. He agreed, focusing on Paget. But rumors about his taste in women lingered for years. By early 1953, Wagner was filming beneath the 12-mile reef in the Bahamas. His role involved diving deep underwater. On February 18th, while filming a spearfishing scene, his air hose got caught on coral at 45 feet. For 3 full minutes, he panicked, low on air, before divers reached him. He came up gasping, vomiting seawater, and refused to dive again. Production halted for 5 days. A double finished the underwater scenes, even as the studio claimed he did it all himself. The irony was stark. This near-drowning survivor would later become known for boats and yachting. In Prince Valiant, things got even more dangerous. Sword fights on set turned bloody. One stuntman's lung was punctured. Another broke a collarbone. One even lost 2 fingers. The accidents were stacking up, and British unions threatened to shut it all down. Off-camera, Wagner's relationship with Deborah Paget stirred more trouble. Her religious mother caught them together in his hotel room. The studio paid $15,000 to silence the scandal and keep Wagner's contract intact. Then came A Kiss Before Dying in 1956. The noir thriller was a big step for Wagner, earning him $75,000. But Robert Stack, his co-star, wasn't happy. Stack made more money and didn't like sharing the spotlight. During rehearsals, he repeatedly spilled coffee on Wagner's scripts, 14 times, according to the director's notes. At one point, Stack locked Wagner in a bathroom trailer for 90 minutes just before a big scene. Wagner didn't retaliate. He just kept working. In Stopover Tokyo, a 68-day shoot in the scorching summer of 1957 brought fresh problems. Wagner's visits to geisha houses in Ginza almost sparked a diplomatic scandal. Photos leaked in a local paper, and Fox had to pay over $6,000 to bury the story. Embassy officials got involved. The U.S. didn't want headlines of a Hollywood actor disrespecting Japanese customs. The studio slapped 2 bodyguards on Wagner, locking him in his hotel for the rest of the shoot. Later that year, during the true story of Jesse James, Wagner broke his collarbone doing a horseback stunt. But the real drama happened off-set. At a Hollywood party, he argued with Elvis Presley over Hope Lang. Wagner allegedly shoved Elvis into a pool. The feud escalated. Elvis's manager demanded an apology. Wagner had found out Elvis had sent Lang a $3,000 diamond bracelet and over 100 roses. The tension between them became so intense that event organizers had to make sure the 2 stars never showed up in the same room. In 1961's Sail a Crooked Ship, Wagner ended up at a Rat Pack yacht party that went horribly wrong. He crashed the boat into rocks, trying to steer in rough water, damaging the vessel and putting Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. in danger. The Coast Guard had to rescue them at 2 a.m. Wagner's blood alcohol level was almost double the legal limit. The $47,000 in damages led to a lawsuit. Sinatra paid the legal fees, but told Wagner he was banned from future yacht parties for 2 years. His role in The Longest Day earned him praise from John Wayne. But behind the scenes, things exploded. Wagner's screen time had been cut nearly in half, and he stormed into producer Darryl Zanuck's trailer, shouting about favoritism. He threatened to walk off the $6 million production. Fox nearly replaced him with Tab Hunter. In the end, his agent negotiated a better deal: 10 minutes of screen time and a $50,000 bonus. But the damage was done. Wagner finished his contract and walked away from Fox, ending a chapter that had started with just $37.50 and a dream. It all started in 1956, the night Robert Wagner hijacked a date that wasn't even his. He was supposed to be with one woman, Natalie Wood, with someone else entirely. But by the end of the evening, he had made the switch. And just like that, Natalie was his. They got married the following year, December 28, 1957, in Scottsdale. But their picture-perfect wedding nearly collapsed when Natalie exploded over some fan letters Wagner had been getting. 2 hours of screaming in their suite at Chateau Marmont, right before they were supposed to say, "I do." Just 2 years later, Wagner found himself on set, watching Warren Beatty wrap an arm around his wife between takes. They were filming All the Fine Young Cannibals, and Beatty, making his debut, was also making his move. Wagner stormed off set more than once. Director Elia Kazan later wrote that Wagner's humiliation was public. Production delays piled up, scripts had to be rewritten, and Wagner was unraveling while the world kept watching. When the marriage ended in April 1962, Wagner surprised everyone again. He quietly began a relationship with Barbara Stanwyck, 23 years older, his former co-star from Titanic. The romance lasted 4 years, completely hidden, with only a few trusted friends in the know. She introduced him to elite circles, helped shape his acting style, and controlled nearly every part of his life. He had to call her hourly, couldn't take a role without her blessing. Eventually, he realized he would always be Mr. Stanwyck, and that was never going to be enough. Then came It Takes a Thief. By 1968, Wagner was earning $5,000 per episode, one of TV's top salaries. He shaped his character with tips from Cary Grant. But things nearly derailed again when Wagner casually spilled plot details at a dinner party, FBI classified espionage details. The Bureau demanded script approval, security briefings, and NDAs across the board. Wagner had to issue a public apology just to keep the show alive. In 1972, he remarried Natalie. It looked like a clean slate, but underneath, everything was cracked. Gossip columns had already been whispering about her method intimacy with co-stars and even a tennis instructor. Wagner pushed for therapy, $200 per session, 2 times a week. The therapist told them the truth. He was controlling. She craved freedom. They stayed together anyway. Casting Heart to Heart almost didn't happen. Wagner wasn't even the first choice. Cary Grant was. Stephanie Powers only got in because a newspaper strike delayed her Broadway play. ABC even asked Natalie Wood to take the role. It was chaotic, but somehow it clicked. The show hit the Marvelous to 12 in ratings and became one of ABC's crown jewels. But then Natalie died, November 29, 1981. She drowned during a Thanksgiving trip on the yacht Splendor with Wagner and Christopher Walken. They had just filmed Heart of Darkness, an episode eerily centered on water. Production froze. Wagner called that period a charmed life turned to ash. Still, the story didn't end. In 1993, nearly 10 years after Heart to Heart was canceled, they came back with reunion movies. Wagner and Powers both produced. Wagner said filming reminded him of family trips he'd planned with Natalie, the ones that never happened. Powers said ABC had killed the original show too early. They had 4 scripts, 2 directors, even Paris locations lined up. The TV movies gave them closure, or at least something close to it. Lionel Stander, who played Max the butler, became the glue that held them together. A blacklisted intellectual, married 6 times, living with 3 women when Wagner met him. They all adored him. Wagner even borrowed Max's famous intro line from an old Double Indemnity poster. When they met, it was murder. Off-screen, it was something like family. The cancellation in 1984 felt like betrayal. Wagner found out while Powers was away filming in Paris. He called her, "We're not on the lineup." No warning. Just like that, it was over. By the time they returned in the 90s, it wasn't just about TV anymore. It was about memory, about loss, about finishing something that never got to finish. At 67, Robert Wagner had mostly faded from the spotlight. His roles were limited to scattered guest appearances, and most of Hollywood had quietly moved on. But then came Austin Powers in 1997. Mike Myers didn't think Wagner was right for the role of number 2. He was, in Myers' words, too dignified, too proper, maybe even too old. But Wagner didn't just show up to the audition. He showed up as Dr. Evil, bald cap, gray suit, a flawless 8-minute impersonation that left Myers stunned. The role, originally just 3 minutes, ballooned to 12 minutes across the trilogy because Wagner nailed it so perfectly. His shh gesture, that alone became a cultural moment. New Line Cinema even printed 50,000 promotional buttons with his face and that single syllable. He made $650,000 from the first film, more than he had earned in 5 years on TV. Across the entire trilogy, Wagner earned $2.3 million. The original film brought $650K, the sequel $800K, and Goldmember $850K. But it wasn't just money. During the 1999 shoot, Wagner insisted on doing his own stunts. At 69, during a scene escape in an underground lair, he fell 8 feet onto concrete. The result? 2 herniated discs, a compressed vertebra, and 6 days of halted production. He was offered OxyContin, but said no. After watching Robert Downey Jr. struggle with addiction, Wagner wasn't going down that road. Instead, he leaned on ice packs and meditation, techniques he learned from Stephanie Powers, his heart-to-heart co-star. The injury required surgery the following year, costing him $75,000 out of pocket. He never filed a claim. He feared it would ruin his chances of future roles. Then came Beyoncé. It was March 2002, and Goldmember was in production. During a boardroom scene, Beyoncé, playing Foxy Cleopatra, began improvising. The problem? Her ad-libs stepped directly over Wagner's iconic lines. Wagner objected. Beyoncé pushed back, calling his character outdated. Things got tense. Director Jay Roach sided with Wagner. 4 scenes were reshot over 3 days. The cost? $480,000. That included $280K to rebuild sets and $200K in overtime. Wagner later said it was the most unprofessional experience of his career. Beyoncé's team brushed it off as creative differences, but the tension was real. In 2010, at age 80, Wagner joined NCIS as Anthony Donoso Sr. He appeared in 13 episodes over 9 years, earning $200,000 per episode. That's $2.6 million. His most lucrative TV work ever. One episode in season 10 hit uncomfortably close to home. His character faked his death to escape Russian assassins. In real life, the Natalie Wood case had just been reopened. Gary Glasberg, the showrunner, admitted the plot was inspired by Wagner's legal troubles. Wagner leaned in. He delivered the line, "Some secrets are worth dying for," with real weight. Michael Weatherly later said Wagner stayed in character between takes. Even during lunch, he spoke like Donoso Sr., especially when discussing father-son relationships. By May 2019, Wagner made his final appearance on NCIS. It was the episode titled The Arizona. In one emotionally loaded scene, Wagner broke from the script. He added the line, "I've carried unforgiven pasts that haunt every breath I take." The line wasn't in the script. It came from him, from decades of personal regret. The crew went quiet. The cameras kept rolling. 4 unscripted minutes. No retakes. That line stayed in the final cut. After wrapping, Wagner sat alone in his dressing room for 20 minutes before coming out to thank everyone. It was his last scripted role. A 65-year career ending with raw, unfiltered truth. But Wagner's career had been shaped just as much by what he did off-camera. In the 1970s, he produced the CBS series Switch. It only ran 3 seasons, but its 71 episodes became gold in syndication. Wagner, who had negotiated a 50% stake through Universal, earned over $8 million from reruns. The show was loosely inspired by The Sting, a clever concept that sold well globally. Despite its short run, it became one of Wagner's smartest financial decisions. In 2008, Wagner published his memoir, Pieces of My Heart. The first printing of 150,000 copies sold out quickly. In it, he revealed an affair with Elizabeth Taylor in the 1950s. He called it a moment of weakness that nearly destroyed his marriage to Natalie Wood. The book also detailed his relationships with stars like Barbara Stanwyck and Joan Crawford. He described Crawford as both terrifying and magnetic. Readers devoured his behind-the-scenes Hollywood stories, not the glamorous red carpet versions, but the messy, human ones. His second book, You Must Remember This, came out in 2014. It peeled back the curtain on old Hollywood's darkest corners. Wagner described organized crime's grip on the industry, including Frank Sinatra's alleged meetings with underworld fixers at the Brown Derby. He spoke of men in tailored suits who made problems disappear, with cash, threats, or both. He even told stories of cover-ups, drug use, affairs, financial misdeeds. He recounted Elizabeth Taylor's infamous tardiness and diva behavior at industry events, offering a candid look at how the studio system protected its biggest stars from public shame. Wagner also dipped into TV movie production. In 1994, he produced The Enemy Within for HBO, a remake of 7 Days in May. He earned an Emmy nomination, but it wasn't smooth sailing. Wagner clashed with director Jonathan Darby over modernizing the script. Things got worse when Forrest Whitaker, the film's lead, briefly walked off set over creative disagreements. HBO execs and the Directors Guild had to step in. Filming was delayed by 3 weeks, but the film still premiered to strong reviews. Wagner's work as producer earned praise, even if it came with battle scars. But not every decision worked in his favor. Wagner turned down Bonnie and Clyde in 1967. He was offered the lead, but chose a vacation with Natalie Wood instead. Warren Beatty took the role, produced the film, and earned over $6 million from his profit share. Wagner later called it one of his biggest regrets. He also declined parts in Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid and The Godfather. Those roles became legendary. Wagner missed out, not just on money, but on the chance to redefine himself in a new era of Hollywood. 2 months after Natalie Wood drowned off Catalina Island on November 29, 1981, Robert Wagner sat across from Jill St. John at a quiet dinner party. She had known Natalie since they were girls, even sent flowers after the funeral. But that February evening in 1982 turned into the start of something unexpected. They went on their first date on Valentine's Day, and Wagner still marks it as their anniversary. People whispered, mostly because Jill had been so close to Natalie. The two had taken ballet together, moved in the same Hollywood circles. But there, Wagner was, still grieving, raising 3 girls, filming Heart to Heart, and now falling in love. They stayed together for 8 years before marrying in April 1990, in the backyard of Wagner's Pacific Palisades home. Natalie's daughters stood as bridesmaids, and the whole thing felt like a strange full circle. Jill became his 4th wife. He became her 4th husband. A blended family, stitched together by grief. After Natalie died, Wagner was left raising 3 daughters alone. Katie was 26, Natasha was 11, and Courtney just 7. The hardest chapter came years later when Natasha, in her 20s, spiraled into a dark depression. She tried to end her life. Wagner found out. He took every single pill in the house and locked it away. It broke him, especially because Natalie had once tried to take her own life too, back in 1964 after splitting with Warren Beatty. She swallowed so many sleeping pills they called it an overdose and a half. Wagner had homeschooled the girls after Natalie's death, but the pain lingered. Natasha later said Wagner saved her life and always treated her like she was truly his, even though they weren't connected by blood. But not all the girls felt that love equally. In 2000, when Courtney turned 26, she exploded. At a family gathering, she accused Wagner of always favoring Natasha, calling her the golden child while pushing Courtney aside. Wagner didn't see it coming. He brushed it off as jealousy. But things escalated fast. Courtney threatened to go public, to tell family secrets. The fallout was brutal. She was banned from birthdays and holidays for over a year. During that time, her life unraveled. In 2012, she was arrested in Malibu for heroin and cocaine possession after a domestic dispute that involved gunshots. The family only found peace again after long therapy sessions, and Wagner finally admitting his mistakes. Now at 95, Wagner is a grandfather too. Riley is 19, Clover is 13, but even that role is tangled in trouble. Wagner controls half of Natalie's $7 million estate as executor and trustee, and some people, especially Natalie's sister Lana, still say he had something to do with her death. If Wagner were ever charged, California's Slayer law could take away his inheritance, all $3.5 million of it. Still, he posts birthday photos for Riley on Instagram, wearing cool grandpa sweatshirts like nothing's wrong. But deep down, he's afraid of lawsuits, of court, of losing everything he's protected for decades. His marriage with Jill has lasted 35 years, surviving everything from public suspicion to real health scares. In 2020, when Wagner got COVID-19 at age 90, it almost killed him. Jill became his nurse, just like he once cared for her. They still cook together, mostly Italian dishes, but their Aspen home became a quiet bubble during the pandemic. That's where Wagner says he wants to be buried, in a grove of aspen trees, beside children who never made it. Their wedding anniversary in 2025 brought out old photos, but also a quiet reality. They're both aging. Jill is 84 now. He calls her his blessing, the one who saved his sanity when the world turned on him. The drowning still haunts everything. Natalie was terrified of dark water. She never would have gone near the edge of the boat at night, especially in stormy weather. But on that November night in 1981, she ended up in the water. The first version said it was an accident. Then, in 2012, the coroner changed the cause from drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. They'd found bruises on her arms, scratches on her face and neck, the kind that don't come from just falling. The captain of the yacht, Dennis Davern, later said Wagner delayed calling for help. When Natalie vanished around 11 p.m., Davern wanted to switch on the lights and call the Coast Guard. Wagner said no. They waited nearly 90 minutes before calling anyone. Davern passed a polygraph test in 2011. Investigators now say that delay may have cost Natalie her life. In 2011, the case was reopened. By 2018, Wagner was officially called a person of interest. Investigators said his story didn't add up. They believe he was the last person to see Natalie alive. And yet, Wagner has refused to speak to them. Meanwhile, more witnesses came forward, sharing new pieces of the night that changed everything. In 2020, HBO released a documentary called Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind. It was co-produced by Natasha. It showed Wagner in a softer light, trying to explain himself. But critics noticed something strange. It never mentioned Davern's most shocking claim, that Wagner held him hostage after the incident, gave him a job, a place to live, even locked him in his room, all to keep him quiet. Davern wrote about it in his book, Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor, but the film skipped that part. Now in 2025, Wagner barely speaks. He's pulled away from the world. He avoids boats completely. He once loved the ocean. Now he won't go near it. He posted a single old photo on July 4th instead of his usual video. Family sources say he has regrets, that he wishes he had looked for Natalie sooner. Investigators believe he might have started seeing Jill St. John even before the drowning, though Jill insists their romance began months later. Either way, the guilt has turned him into a shadow of who he was. Still, his Aspen estate is beautiful. It covers 7.5 acres. He and Jill moved there after selling their Brentwood home for $14 million in 2007. Wagner still rides a stationary bike for exactly 30 minutes every morning. That's his routine. He says it keeps him young. Most of his $20 million fortune comes from heart to heart and residuals from Austin Powers. But in 2025, things got scary again. Natasha posted a video of him working out on his birthday, doing leg lifts to Sinatra's My Way. But doctors told him to stop. His heart, already weakened from childhood rheumatic fever, couldn't take it. Friends said he was turning pink, breathing heavily, switching between machines like a man half his age. He just smiled and said, "It's going pretty good." On Instagram, he still acts cheerful, posts old photos, celebrates his acting milestones, honors Natalie on their would-be anniversary. But people close to him say he's lonely, that Jill is the only person keeping him grounded, that the case, the rumors, the guilt, they've all worn him down. In quiet moments, Wagner has talked about his career regrets. The biggest? Turning down The Godfather. He didn't want to be typecast in crime films. He also skipped The Graduate, Butch Cassidy, even Rebel Without a Cause. He said no to roles that could have changed everything. Now, at 95, he questions those choices, says life is full of missed turns. But he's not done. He wants to write one more book, a sequel to Pieces of My Heart, and you must remember this. He says this one will be about growing old with grace. He still shares his favorite lines, like how life is made of pieces of your heart, or how dogs teach you love better than most people. He tells fans not to dwell on what-ifs, only what is. His story, though filled with fame and fortune, is also wrapped in pain and silence. But in his final chapter, Robert Wagner still wants to be remembered as someone who kept going.